that with my team. All right. Perfect, perfect. We are. Hello, hello, Damon.
Hello, hello, hello. Good morning.
Good morning to you. Yeah, what time is it at your place now?
It is 7 o'clock in the morning, my time here. I'm in Vancouver, so I'm Pacific Standard Time. So
Oh my
nice and
God.
early
Well,
for me. What about for you?
wow. Yeah. What's that?
What time is it for you?
6 p.m. 6 p.m.
Ah,
Yeah,
nice.
yeah,
Bit of a
yeah.
difference here.
World is an interesting place now with all this technology we have now, right?
Definitely. It's amazing. Yeah, I really love that about the world right now. You can pretty much do your thing from anywhere in the world and collaborate with people from all over the world. It's an interesting time. Yeah, it's very, very convenient.
Exactly, exactly. And I mean, that brings us to our interview today, because as I told you, my students, my clients are people who learn English to actually be able to use all this technology and to collaborate with people with all over the world. So this is very exciting. And every week I'm bringing a very interesting guest, which you definitely are, and to interview and to see, what's happening in the world, what people are working at, and to actually see that people, doesn't matter where they come from, it's still like the same things. We all want to succeed, we all want, flourish and prosper and actually help people. So yeah, so thanks so much for joining us today.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Excellent, Damon. So let's start with the first question, and just for my audience to get to know you a little bit better, and if you could tell us a couple of words about yourself, how you grew up, are you originally from Canada, and yeah, so just a couple of words about yourself.
Most definitely. So my name again is Damon Woodward. I'm currently located in Vancouver, Canada. I just relocated here a few months ago. I was living in Winnipeg, which is basically dead center of the country here. And I'm a real estate investor and an entrepreneur. About 6 years ago, I transitioned myself from mining into entrepreneurship. I did my very first real estate deal back in 2017, 2018, beginning of 2018, which was basically a house flip using none of my own money. I learned how to raise money, do a little flip. And then fast forward a few years from there, and one of the things that I'm most known for, best known for in my circle or my sphere is in 2020, the end of 2020, I closed the biggest residential apartment building deal in the history of one of the biggest brokerages in my city of about 1 million people. So I went from a small little deal 2018 to a really large apartment deal sort of 2020, 2021. And over the last couple of years, maybe 3 or 4 years, I've been able to acquire over 100 units of real estate just by training and educating and really spending a lot of time on coaches, mentorships, programs, seminars. So that's I guess sort of how I'm the best known at this very moment is the real estate. If I rewind back, my upbringing was quite interesting actually. So I wasn't always an entrepreneur. I was born in the very northern part of Canada called Whitehorse. It's called the Yukon. It's very very. It's almost like the North Pole, pretty much. Very isolated, very quiet. And for whatever reason, my mom, when I was a kid, she moved me and my twin brother around like all over the place. So I grew up all over Canada. I went to 1 million different schools. I lived in 1 million different cities. And when I was 14 years old, I ended up getting onto a program called SIL, which stands for Student Independent Living, which is essentially, I guess I would explain it, it's essentially welfare for kids that don't have parents that move out on their own that are trying to finish school. So I got assigned a social worker when I was 14. I basically got money from the government to help me pay for rent, and they helped me get my own place. Um, so if you can picture that, I was a 14-year-old kid, maybe what is that, grade 8 or grade 9. And I was the only kid in school that had his own place. I didn't really have parents around at that time. So I started just kind of doing my own thing and floating around here and there. The story sort of writes itself. I started to attract kind of the questionable crowd because at that time I was the only person that had their own place when I was still in school. And then over the course of, maybe 4 or 5 years, um, I started hanging out with the sort of like the bad crowd and started getting myself into a lot of trouble as I was a kid, like before I became an entrepreneur. So I had a really interesting childhood floating around, kind of hacking and slashing on my own. I didn't really have a whole lot of guidance. And I floated around from city to city to city, hanging out with kind of questionable kids, getting into a little bit of trouble until I was maybe 20 or so. Then I kind of started snapping out of it and then went into a normal, stable career and then eventually became an entrepreneur. But there was definitely some years there coming up that were extremely interesting. And, I wouldn't say I was fortunate enough to, but I was also, I guess, fortunate enough to do a couple of short jail stints when I was about 19, 20, because again, I was just, no real guidance, just doing my thing on my own. And I think a lot of that, now that I look back, really shaped me and really helped me become a really strong entrepreneur, because I didn't only see sort of the good side that a lot of people see. I was also able to sort of experience like sort of the darker side of the world, if that makes sense. And, rub elbows with some of kind of like the darker crowd, the bad crowd. And I think that overall, it really helped to shape me into a really solid entrepreneur, because even though it wasn't the most positive thing that I was doing at that time, there's still a lot of lessons to be learned when you're kind of off the beaten path and you're sort of learning all these hard lessons on your own. So fast forward until 2018 is when I really started to pull myself into entrepreneurship and started investing really heavily on personal development and coaches. And I ended up spending, probably close to 150 grand since 2017 on coaches, personal development, symposiums, seminars. So 2018 was sort of a pivotal point for me, but I definitely did have a pretty colorful upbringing up until that point, just based on certain circumstances when I was a boy, if that makes sense to you.
Wow, Damon, what a story. What a story. So if you
Yeah.
don't mind me asking, how old are you now?
I just turned 35 in April. Yeah,
Nice, nice. So
35 years young.
I mean, I
Yeah.
can see your adult life started very early. So basically, you were on your own at 14 years old, and obviously no guidance, no real advice, and life started turning into different directions. But what we're interested in, how it actually ended up, it ended up very well. So that's good.
Definitely. Yeah, it's very
That's
positive now.
yeah,
Yeah.
so let's look at this turning points, like what do you think helped you to actually transition into this good, like a better side of life,
Yeah.
maybe a dream you had, or maybe a person you met, or like if you could just see, like what turning points could you look at looking back?
Definitely. So I eventually, when I was 21, I found myself in the mining industry. So I started off as like sort of a general laborer, just doing lots of manual labor. And over the course of about 7 or 8 years, I worked my way up through a whole bunch of the different mining circuits without explaining too much about how the mining works. I worked myself up a whole bunch of different positions until I found myself sort of at the very top of the food chain as far as mining, as a control room operator. So it was a fairly stable sort of career path. It was a really good salary. Like I was definitely making six figures. It's a lot of responsibility. I was controlling the production for the entire processing plant, and it's like close to $1 billion project, like a mine. It's like all the way from Canada to Japan, and there's hundreds of employees. And I found myself doing really, really well with mining. At the time, the price of copper started to drop, and everybody that I was working with, at least all the older, the old dogs I was working with that had been in the industry for 30 or 40 years, they had all seen a whole bunch of different cycles of copper going so low that a lot of the mines started shutting down. So for that reason, a lot of people were sort of on edge in the mining industry. Like, are our jobs secure? Are we going to have work next year? Like, if the price of copper goes too much lower, we're pretty much all going to be unemployed. And at that time, I didn't really have a whole bunch of sort of like secondary education to fall back on. The majority of my education and training was very specialized to mining. So I decided to put my name in for an apprenticeship, which is basically a 4-year program. The mine would pay for me to become a millwright, which is essentially an industrial mechanic that fixes the big mine equipment. So I put my name in for the apprenticeship. They gave it to me because I'd been there for so long. And so I moved to Vancouver to attend BCIT, which is British Columbia Institute of Technology, which is a pretty reputable school here for a trade school, to do my 4-year apprenticeship. So the sort of the turning point for me, and sort of what opened up my eyes to entrepreneurship, is I was in a brand new city waiting to do my first day of my first year of the apprenticeship. And there was a real estate seminar up the street from my campus. So I just saw a huge banner right up the street that said free real estate seminar. And at that time, my mind was very much in trades. I was thinking that I really had it made. I'm going to get my trade ticket. If the price of copper drops too much, I can go work in a different industry with my trade ticket. I can go work at like a chocolate factory, anywhere with equipment. So it was very versatile. So I felt a lot more secure in that idea of going into the trades. I went in, and that's very much where my mind was. I walked into the seminar. It was at the one of like the Hilton hotels downtown Burnaby, and it was basically a 2 hour sales pitch, trying to sell memberships for their real estate club. But there was a speaker there. His name is Richard Dolan, and he's actually quite famous now. He used to be an investment banker, and now he's I'd call him a life coach. He coaches like A-list celebrities like Mike Tyson. If you go to his Instagram, it's just him with a million celebrities. Like he's a very charismatic speaker. So I was, very much blue collar in mining, had no clue what I was getting myself into. I said, why not go and check out this seminar? I'm here anyway. I don't know anybody anyway. And at that time, I owned one small condo that I had as a rental. So I tiptoed myself in. It was the first time I'd ever been around entrepreneurs. So I walked into the Hilton Hotel. I'm brand new to the big city, if you can picture it. I kind of came from a smaller town. Now I'm in the big city. There's this big real estate seminar going on. Everybody's in a very nice polished suit, three-piece suit. So just the energy when I walked into the hotel, like it was something that I'd never really experienced before. So I walked into the room. I saw Richard Dolan do a 2 hour presentation on the benefits of real estate investing, wealth, cash flow, leverage. And I literally had never heard of any of this because of the way that I grew up. I just never was exposed to any of it. So after his 2 hour presentation, like my mind was literally completely blown. And it was literally that moment when I was like unsure about trades. I said, okay, I'm here to become a tradesperson and get my ticket. And now there's all this other cool stuff and all the cool kids are doing all the real estate over here. So maybe the trades isn't the best thing for me to do. Maybe the real estate, maybe I should look into this a little bit more. So that was probably the biggest turning point, at least mentally, when I really shifted my focus from trades, make a really safe, secure salary for 100,000 a year minimum and have job security, or I can actually start accumulating some wealth and learn how to raise money and develop certain skills and become an entrepreneur over there. So for the next, I'd say 1 to 2 years, that's when I started investing really heavily on all these different courses. And I hired my first coach that ended up not being overly fruitful. I spent probably 30 grand on my first big coaching package, like shortly after that little talk. So it only took 2 hours from this individual named Richard Dolan to really sell me on the idea of real estate. And I've pretty much been addicted to entrepreneurship and real estate ever since. And I attribute a lot of it to literally that 2 hour talk from Richard Dolan. If I never would have moseyed into that room, I probably would still be sitting in a control room right now or on a mine site somewhere. So that was probably my biggest pivotal aha moment when I sort of woke up to some of the other possibilities that are out there and opportunities that are out there over and above just working in mining until I retire as a career. So that was the
Wow.
biggest for me.
Yeah, that's amazing. So what do you think actually made you attend that seminar? Like, is there something like maybe a dream you had when you were a kid or something you were still like, okay, I'm not sure this is for me what I have right now, but was there anything which you could remember?
Yeah, the only thing that I would say that I can remember is at that time, I was already fortunate enough to have purchased my own small condo as a rental. So I just coincidentally already owned a small condo. I wasn't thinking about it as being a real estate investor at that time. So I wasn't really, trying to buy a bunch of properties and have a bunch of rental income or have a bunch of tenants. I bought that one initially to live in myself. And the only reason it was a rental is because I ended up moving cities. So I just had a little rental. If I didn't have that rental, I don't think I would have been interested enough in real estate to even walk in the door. So that was likely the main reason is I just happened to already have one small property under my belt. So I thought, why not go and just explore what this free thing is and just sort of see what they have to offer. So that was likely it. If I didn't have that condo at the time, I probably would have just skipped it and not even have stepped into the room there.
Right, right. Another thing I see here, so obviously that your mind was open, like it was open for new information, and as you said, like in 2 hours, your whole viewpoint can change. So how
Definitely.
important is that, right? Like, and I mean,
Absolutely.
I love this idea that basically the results people have in their lives right now depend on information they acting on. So if you don't like results you're getting right now, so change the information you're getting right now and change the quality of your decisions and actions, right? Like, would you agree with that?
I would agree with that 100%. And what I ended up doing when I was floating around, so I invested very heavily on the first coaching program. Exactly like you said, I got a whole bunch of new information. It's almost like a fire hose coming at me because I'm like, okay, there's all these different strategies. There's so many different types of real estate. So I was still at that time just trying to sift through it. And then over a period of time, it took me probably 9 months, 9 to 12 months to realize that that wasn't necessarily the right path. I had a lot of new information, but there was definitely still missing information that I was searching for. So I still started doing a whole bunch of other courses, seminars. I hired a few more coaches. I was pretty much at that time, exactly like you said, just trying to get the right information. So I started just hiring a bunch of people and scraping as much data as I could, and then sifting through some of it and kind of, putting some of it to the side until I eventually hired the coach that was, that probably made the biggest impact on my career and that I learned the majority of what I know from. And it took me investing very, very heavily on a whole bunch of information until I finally found the information that was aligned with myself, that I was really able to capitalize on and sort of monetize. So to your point, I agree 100%. Having the right information is crucial. And not only having the right information, one of the things that I strongly believe is, we have access to so much information today. We have AI, there's Google, YouTube, you can learn almost anything that you want to online. But the information is a really important piece. But I would attribute the majority of somebody's success, not necessarily to the technical data. A lot of it, in my opinion, comes back to personal fears and personal weaknesses in an individual. The technical knowledge and the information is definitely one really important part, but the bigger part is our fears and our weaknesses. So we can, and I now I coach other people on how to become real estate investors, and I see it all the time. Sometimes people can have the best information on the planet, but if there's still fears and weaknesses and sort of limiting beliefs and things like that, even if you have the information, sometimes it's really tough to break through to actually get to a result. So personal development, in my opinion, is the best way to be able to help sort of elevate your consciousness, strip down some of the fears, some of the weaknesses, have somebody there with you sort of side by side, helping you walk through the path, because then, you can sort of detour around certain obstacles and you can really get a lot more benefit to trying to do something on your own. So the information is super important, but the fears and weaknesses also an extremely important sort of factor. And personal development, in my opinion, is one of the only ways to be able to break through a lot of that. And without doing a lot of personal development, it's really tough for people to have a lot of success. People can be successful, of course, without doing a bunch of training. But if people are educating themselves, especially on the personal development side, they're going to move a lot further, a lot faster. That's for sure.
Yeah, 100%. So having invested a lot in, help from other people, from other coaches, being a coach yourself, which would you say are the 3 points how to choose the right coach? Let's say I want to transition into a new area, a real estate, or maybe a completely different area of my, expertise or whatever. So what should I be looking for in a coach?
So that's a really good question, and this is something that a lot of people struggle with a lot. Is they aren't really sure who to hire or what information they should listen to. What I see a lot of people doing, and I was sort of guilty of this myself, is sometimes people try to listen to too many people at the same time, and then the message, the blueprints all lead to a slightly different destination. So people are trying to take little bits of this, little bits of this, little bits of this, and somehow put it together. And it's almost like they have the wrong ingredients to make the cake. They sort of have half the ingredients for a cake, half the ingredients is going to make a pie. They're just throwing everything into one bowl. They're mixing it up. And then they're like, how come, where's my cake? But it's like the information is too scattered. So one of the things that I did, I would say the first point is don't be afraid to invest into training, and don't be afraid to, if it's very clear that the information that you're seeing is not the information that's going to get you to your destination, don't be afraid to put it to the side and then try something new until you find something that you're aligned with. And that's exactly what I did. So I hired coach one. I went through all the training, but it wasn't really the path that I wanted. So I hired coach two, then I hired coach three. And it took me a while to sift through a lot of that to really find the one coach that I really aligned with. So I guess I would summarize that as don't be afraid to invest in yourself. Don't be afraid to drop information if it becomes very clear that it's not necessarily the right information, even if you've already invested into it, because all you're doing is you're wasting time if you're following somebody's advice that is fairly clear that it's not going to be the advice for you. So that would be another point. And I would say I would recommend to make sure that you really align with somebody's results and also somebody's character. The reason that I ended up relocating myself to Winnipeg is because the coach that I hired that ultimately became my main coach and mentor, he was a very well-known entrepreneur in the Canadian real estate space. And he wrote 8 books. He has a whole bunch of courses, but he was a very polarizing character, meaning you either loved him or you hated him. He was very smart. Like he had a very big, very strong following. But since his message was so polarizing and his opinions were very controversial, there was also this other category of people that really didn't connect with his messaging and didn't really like him. So there was sort of a line in the sand, and there was a bunch of people on both sides that had very strong opinions one way or the other about him. So I would say find somebody that you really align with, and if you can, this is sort of an extra tip, do what you can to align yourself with that individual, or even sort of immerse yourself with that individual so you can learn as much as possible. What I ended up doing, and this was sort of the springboard for me, is I actually relocated myself all the way across the country just to go and work for this individual in person. So I could learn not only from his courses and from, the stuff that I was seeing from him online. I actually put myself in his immediate sphere of influence. And in doing that, that's a pretty big commitment. Not everybody's going to just leave every single thing they know behind and just move somewhere random to go work with somebody. But if you can figure out a way to align yourself with that individual, work for them, just spend as much time as possible around them and around the information. It's just going to really help you grow and develop that much faster, because it's basically, I would call it immersion. And that was
Yeah.
really my catalyst. Is I moved out there to work with him. I was in the same office as him. I was basically starstruck the first time that I met him in person, because he was just such an influence in the space. And I'm a little bit crazy. I just said, you know what? I'm just going to pack everything that I own into my car and drive for 23 hours to go and work for this random guy that I follow online to hopefully learn the stuff that I need to learn to become a successful entrepreneur. And then for the 5 years following, it was probably the most pivotal time in my life, because I just learned so much from this individual. And fast forward, he passed away a few years ago. He's a very young guy. He passed away. So I also stepped in and started running his company after he passed away, and I helped his estate sift through a whole bunch of his other companies, and I stayed on for 2 years after he passed away. And in that process, I learned a ton in that process as well. So not only did I learn from him directly, putting myself in a situation that I was close to him made me learn. I probably did 10 or 12 years of learning in 2 years after he passed away, because I was also thrown into sort of like the CEO role of this fairly large multi-million-dollar training company. And I also, at that time, was attempting to purchase his company. That's why I stayed on for so long. So in that whole process, to sort of zero in back in on your question, I learned a ton. And really look at somebody, make sure that you really align with them, their messaging, and also the results. You want to make sure they have the results that you're looking for. But if it's possible, and if you want to move really fast, don't be afraid to put yourself into close proximity with that individual outside of a training program, because that's when you're going to absorb 10 times as much information as if you were only doing coaching. So that would probably be the last one would be, don't be afraid to make big moves, and don't be afraid to fully immerse yourself in whatever it is that you're looking to do, because you're going to excel much, much faster, and you're going to learn a lot more than if you're just doing some courses online.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much. And it's like a shortcut, like you said. It's like you learned in 2 years something which probably would have taken you 12 years of your life, which is actually, that's the game. That's the game we are playing.
Yeah. There's also a lot of leverage that comes along with it as well. Like one of the reasons I was able to propel myself so fast, not only because I was fully immersed with this individual and learning as much as I could from him, um, I was able to leverage that relationship publicly online also. So there was a lot of leverage that I had. It was this guy's name is Stefan Arnio, very, very well-known investor entrepreneur in my circle, and especially the Canadian space. He wrote a ton of books, but having the opportunity to be so closely aligned with him allowed me to have a ton of leverage when I was building my brand initially around real estate investing. So everybody looked at me as sort of the prodigy or the protege of Stefan Arnio. And that really helped me excel very quickly because people, it's sort of like branding by association, if that makes sense, which is a really sort of a sophisticated way to align yourself and to really propel your own brand, is branding by association. That's why you see a lot of people when they're going from this seminar to that seminar, they're taking pictures with the keynote speakers, they're posting it on their Instagram just to show that you're aligned with some of these individuals. So that's just for an extra sort of tip for the audience, that really helped me propel myself forward really, really quickly, because not only was I learning a lot of really good information, I all of a sudden had a tremendous amount of leverage because of the circle that I was now operating under or operating in. So there's a ton of benefits to doing that.
Nice, nice. So now you're not only investing in real estate, but you're also helping others to become investors in real estate. So what is your purpose? Like, what is your goal? What are you trying to achieve with this activity? And yeah, I'm really, really curious because it's amazing space. My husband and I were also in real estate, not as much as you are, but this is still, it's an amazing area. We love it. But for you, this is the professional area, and you're obviously going to build your, profession and life on it. So what is your purpose here?
So I'd say my main purpose. So I became really, really close with Stefan, with this individual that I mentioned. And he passed away really, really young, but I had a really unique opportunity to come into his training company from the ground up. I started doing sales, just basically phone sales, when I was setting appointments to him. And then he was closing some of the larger sort of coaching programs. So I started developing a lot of really good skills, specifically in sales, which really helped me later on become an entrepreneur. But I had an opportunity to come into his company, align myself with him. I really, really respect this individual even now. Like I still watch his content pretty much every week, even though he passed away a few years ago. So I felt really sort of really emotionally connected to him. Not only that, I had an opportunity to come into his training company just as a sort of an entry-level salesperson. Eventually, I started doing the high ticket sales that he was doing. Eventually, I started running his company with him. And then after he passed away, I had the opportunity to take over his company. And, I was hoping to buy it because he worked extremely hard, probably for, 10 or 12 years building this really, really great company. I had, my life was impacted so much as a result of that, that I was really emotionally connected to trying to purchase it so I can continue on his legacy exactly as he laid out, sort of like take the torch, so to speak. It was a really, really good program. It was a 5-year platform to help people not only do their first real estate deal without really having to spend any of their own money, like we teach people how to raise money, but also work with people for a few years in a row until they could become a full-time investor or a full-time entrepreneur. So the objective there was to make $1 million within a 5-year period. It was called the MI5 program. So I had an opportunity to run, learn everything from the ground up, the sales process, how the marketing worked. Eventually, I acted as the CEO for a few years of that business, and it was turning over a few $1 million of revenue. So it was a decent sized little training company. So I learned a ton in the process. But one of the reasons that I decided to go into coaching myself and to start my own training company was so I can sort of take a similar blueprint to what he put together and really apply that for other people, because it impacted my life incredibly. I have so much knowledge in the real estate training space now that I was in that business for 5 or 6 years. So it really makes a lot of sense. And if I can help other people do exactly what I did, go from being very blue collar. I had a very colorful background. I wasn't overly educated. I didn't even graduate high school. I got into a lot of trouble when I was just, probably in grade 11, grade 12 age. I didn't even finish high school. And I was able to take the teachings from him and apply that to myself. And I've been able to buy over 100 units of real estate in the last, handful of years. I think that information is extremely valuable. So if I can now offer, similar information, a similar blueprint to other people, I can help walk people through doing exactly what I did. So I'm very passionate about it for that reason. So that was why, at the time I was trying to buy his company. Unfortunately, it didn't work according to plan with the estate. They kind of changed their heart at the last minute and et cetera, et cetera. So it just didn't really work out. But I sat for about a year after, not really doing a lot of training or coaching myself, just really debating if I wanted to start my own training company. Because at that time, I was the face, I was the glue. I had a lot of people inside of that company that were extremely loyal to me. Like when I left that company, I think 9 or 10 people left the same day because everybody was really loyal to me. So for the following, 12 months, I had people coming to me all the time, like, hey, when are you starting your own company? When are you starting your own training? When are you starting to coach? How do I want to come and work for you? So I had all these people that were in my sphere of influence at that time, kind of coming to me at like the market sort of was asking me to do it and I was sort of resisting it for a long period of time because I think I was still sort of healing to some degree because I was really emotionally invested in buying and continuing this training company. It didn't go according to plan. So at that time, I was viewing it as a little bit of I would almost call it a little bit of a failed purpose at that time because I put a lot of my energy and a lot of my emotion and a lot of my life into that one objective. Didn't go according to plan. So for, maybe 9 to 12 months after, I was just really uncertain if I wanted to start my own thing. Do I never want to talk about training ever again? Because it's sort of like a sore spot. What do I want to do? But then so many people were coming to me all the time, and so many of the previous students of that company were coming to me all the time wanting me to personally train them. Maybe 12 months later, it became very clear to me that it was sort of a path that I should go down because not only do I have the skills and the, I guess the various skill sets and knowledge to really benefit people, but the market was really craving me to come in because when that company shut down, it shut down shortly after because without going too off the deep end, the guy that came in to do what I was doing after I left wasn't really that equipped to do it. It was like a very new business model for him. He was never involved in the company when Stefan was alive. So the company didn't survive very long after I left, which was very unfortunate. So there was all these things in my mind and, over time, I just made the decision, okay, now it's time to start my own training company. The market wants it. I really love doing it. I really love giving back to other people because, so many people gave back to me. So it was sort of, I think you can probably see where I was going with this. It was sort of an emotional thing that happened, and it took me a little bit of time to sift through it. But my reason for doing it now is the reasons I just mentioned. The market was really craving it, and I do have a lot of really good knowledge and skills and information that can really benefit other people. So it's sort of, I felt like I was sort of called to do it over a
Yeah,
period.
I was just gonna use this specific word
Yeah,
called. Called to do it because
yeah,
I feel we are I have very similar experience because basically like I've always loved teaching languages and like
yeah,
as you know our company teaches English as a second language but I mean this is the people who actually were like, okay, we need it, what else you got, like we're so excited about this opportunity. So yeah, absolutely.
yeah. Definitely. So you kind of see the vision. I think you can really understand exactly how that went for me since you guys are also doing your own training. It's a really fulfilling thing to do and to be able to give back and to be able to assist people. It's a lot of work, don't get me wrong. Setting up a new training company, as you're well aware,
Yeah.
it's a lot more work than people think. One of the nice things about his company is he built it over 10 or 12 years to be what it is. So then I was now all of a sudden starting fresh, new content, new curriculum, new everything. I'm not starting from the point, from a sort of like the rookie perspective. I have a lot of knowledge already, but there's definitely a tremendous amount of work that goes into it. But it is very fulfilling and it's a very sort of worthwhile thing to do.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you, Damon. So let's talk about entrepreneurship. because a lot of people think, okay, this is, they want it. They want, okay, this is freedom. It's going to give you financial independence. You can travel, you can, be more free, whatever. But not many people actually understand what it takes to build a successful company. So what would you say are three key traits a person has to have to actually be a successful entrepreneur? And if you don't have those, I mean, don't even start.
Yeah, so that's a really, really good question. When I look at entrepreneurship as a whole, one of the biggest pitfalls, I should say, of entrepreneurship is people, like you said, people don't understand how much effort is actually going to be required to start a company. So the first thing that I would say is somebody needs to be very persistent, because entrepreneurship is really tough. It takes a long time. You need to sift through a lot of information to get the plan. Then you have to have people helping you execute the plan. So you have to be, you have to have a few specific characteristics to be successful. And persistence is going to be one of the main ones, because entrepreneurship, something's always breaking in entrepreneurship. Like there's always some fire to put out. There's always some issue. Like there's always money that should be at the lawyer's closing table that for some reason isn't there. And now you have to come up with another like 450 grand, like in 4 days, or else you're going to lose a big deposit. Like there's lots of stuff that can happen as an entrepreneur. So being persistent, or, figuring out a way to become more persistent is going to be really important. One of the biggest pitfalls in entrepreneurship, and when I say entrepreneurship, people don't necessarily understand that. I would say that it's a multidisciplinary endeavor when you're going into entrepreneurship. Meaning, just because somebody has driven a truck for 30 years and he might be the best truck driver on the planet, you're a professional driver, doesn't mean that he's fully equipped to all of a sudden start his own trucking company just because he's a specialist with one piece of the puzzle. So it's a multidisciplinary endeavor. So you need to know a little bit about so many different things when you become an entrepreneur. So I would say another one is being able to either make sure that you have a wide enough sphere of responsibility to understand how all the different pieces work is going to be really important. Doesn't mean you have to be an expert in everything, but I would say making sure that you're open to taking in new information, that's going to be really, really, really important, because that's one of the biggest pitfalls, again, is people don't understand that you need to know so much about so many different things to become an entrepreneur. They think that just because they're specialized, they're the head chef, so now they can just go and open the restaurant. But they forgot about now there's shipping, ordering, hiring, you got to recruit, you got to train, you got to do this, there's taxes, you got to incorporate, so there's all this other stuff that the chef has no idea sort of how to maneuver through. So I would say just, persistence would be a big one.
Yeah.
Making sure that you're open to receiving information and understanding information, or putting people in place that understands that information very well is another one. So I would say your ability to sort of network, I think, is going to be a really strong asset if you want to become an entrepreneur, because, and especially with real estate investing. So real estate is sort of, I say it's insider trading, legal insider trading. It's all about the people that you have around and that you can access. And that's how you become the most successful. It's kind of the same thing with entrepreneurship. So if you can't network to find important people that you need to help you along the way, eventually it's going to be really, really tough. So I would say persistence would be one. Improve your ability to network so you can meet other people, and you can, there could be partners in there. There could be people with complementary skill sets in there that you can, kind of use to help you with areas that you might not be as strong in. That would be another one. And probably the most important one that helped me the most is, if you have never been in sales before, it's really difficult to become an entrepreneur, in my honest opinion. So your ability to sell, or your experience to sell, is a really, really, really important part of becoming an entrepreneur, because not only are you selling a product as an entrepreneur, like I would assume somebody that's going into entrepreneurship is probably selling something. You're also selling the vision of the company. You're also selling the vision of your core belief systems. Like there's a lot of sales being made as an entrepreneur over and above selling the product. to get a team together, to motivate people. Eventually, you're going to have staff that needs to be motivated. So the ability to sell and the experience of learning how to sell, specifically, I would say specifically phone sales is really good. But even if it was more of a retail sale thing, it's still going to be a really good experience. But having that sales ability is a night and day difference. The reason that I ended up moving to Winnipeg to work with the coach that I mentioned earlier was because in every single one of his videos on YouTube, he always said you need to learn how to sell if you want to scale your own company. You need to be on straight commissions. This is what he told me online. You need to be on straight commission for 2 years in a row minimum, making $100,000 per year minimum on straight commission before you're fully qualified to become a successful entrepreneur. Now, can people do it without doing that? Absolutely. But if people are really serious about becoming an entrepreneur, I highly recommend to spend some time learning sales, because that I listened to him say that. I really took it to heart. And that's why I moved to Winnipeg initially. I pitched him. I said, listen, you're always saying you need to learn how to sell if you want to become an entrepreneur. Are you hiring salespeople in your organization? Because I don't know how to sell yet, and I'm having a hard time setting up my real estate company. I was also in a really difficult real estate market at that time when I was just trying to become an entrepreneur. So everybody that was here they're all sharks. It's very competitive. The realtors are all sharks. The contractors are sharks. You're competing against large skyscraper developers for the single family home that you're trying to buy to flip. So it's like very challenging. So not knowing how to sell, I was having a rough time putting all the pieces together. When I thought that I was interviewing somebody else, like they were sort of interviewing me, if that makes sense, because it was just a very competitive landscape.
Right.
So I pitched him on sales. He's like, well, you're going to have to move to Winnipeg. Like, he got really excited as soon as I asked him. His ears just went right up. He's like, well, why do you ask? I'm like, well, I kind of want to learn sales. Are you hiring? He's like, yeah, you're going to have to move to Winnipeg. I'm like, when? Tell me when. Like, tell me how I can come there. So that's the reason that I moved there initially. And what happened with me, I'm not saying this is going to be the case with everybody. The first year that I was there, I outperformed all the other salespeople by about 4x, 5x. So I did very, very well my very first year of doing hardcore phone sales. I think I made myself like $170,000 or $180,000 of straight commission year one. Year two, I broke 200,000. So I started making really, really good money, having a really good offer, learning sales. But that skill set was how I was able to excel my real estate company so quickly. I started raising money really, really well. I got to a point within about a year of me being in hardcore phone sales. I think I had 8 or 9 house flips on the go at one time. I bought all of them in cash. I didn't use banks. I used cash investors for everything. I raised money for all of those from investors. And I started growing my company really, really fast. And I attribute probably 80% of that success to having the sales experience, because pretty much everything that we're doing it's very, very similar. If I'm selling somebody a $20,000 or $30,000 program online for some like really high-end training, it's almost the same process as me raising a few $100,000 or $500,000 for a real estate project. It's pretty much the exact same thing. So the third and the most important part, kind of what should somebody have to become an entrepreneur is the salesmanship and the sales ability. Again, is really, really, really important if you want to grow quickly.
Wow, I love it, Damon. So to boil it down to 3 points, it's persistence, networking, and learn how to sell. And I mean,
Yeah.
I loved your story about actually going and working for the guy. And I mean, let me ask you something, because it took some courage. I'm sure it took some courage to actually, dial the guy and say, hey, are you hiring? I want to come work for you. So did you have any self-doubt, fear, maybe he's not going to like it or whatever? Because I mean, a lot of people actually think about opportunities and they probably would like to change something in their lives, but when like you mentioned before, it's actually self-doubt and low self-esteem and things like that, which is on our way, right? So how did you handle that at that time? Like, what actually helped you to push your courage up and still do it?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. in the back of my mind at that time, I still had that 2 hour presentation from Richard Dolan in the back of my mind. And I really, really felt strongly about learning real estate and entrepreneurship, sort of by any means necessary at that time. So to answer your question, I was basically terrified about the move. Because on one side, this was an individual that I really, really looked up to. Like he was pretty much a celebrity at this point. Like I'm like, oh my, I was like, I'm gonna go and meet this guy and actually work with this guy. And then the second part is I'd never had a sales position. I'd never sold really anything at that time. So when I was doing a little bit of the sort of the onboarding stuff, he sent me like a 12-page sales script. And he said, this is the script that you're going to be using when you get here. So, practice this script and I'll see you on, I think it was March 1st. I'll see you March 1st. Practice this script. So I'm like, okay, no idea what's about to happen. I didn't even really understand what I was about to be selling. All I knew was I was going to go and sell something like real estate related and just learn sales. I'm like, yeah, I don't even really know what I'm walking into at this point, but I'm just going for it. Like I'm just going. So I took the script. I role played the script. I literally at this time I think it was with my twin brother or maybe a close friend, I role played the script. And it was literally the worst thing that you've ever heard on earth, me reciting this script. It was so horribly bad. I whipped up my phone. I was recording myself run the script, and I was like this is gonna be like a gong show. Like I was like, I'm gonna be so bad at this. Like I have no idea what's about to happen. I don't sound normal. I sound very scripted. My tonality is all over the map. I don't really understand like the ins and outs because sales as a whole, there's sort of two parts. You have the art and then you have the science. The art is like the creative art. It's like kind of moving and shaking and just, it's a little bit more creative. Then the science is like the technical stuff that is embedded in a sale, psychologically to actually push a sale through. So there's basically two sides, and you really need over time you need to learn both sides: the art, the creative art, and sort of the mechanical science. And I guess to the audience, you're probably not going to be good at it right off the bat. Luckily, when I got out there, even though it sounded horrible, my creative art side was really, really strong. So when I got out there, I would start on the script, and then eventually I wouldn't be on the script. I would just be having some really organic conversations. And I started selling strictly on enthusiasm. There was really no smart technical salesmanship happening. It was like pure enthusiasm. But I still started selling really, really well based on that. Then I would try to go back to the mechanical science and the script. And it was very dry, very rigid. It sounded very wooden, very bad. And I think psychologically, when I was halfway through the script, instantly I'm like, this person doesn't like me. I sound horrible. They're about to hang up on me. Like there was a lot of fear in it. So I think the point that I'm making is I was pretty uncomfortable at first. But one of the things about the persistence and kind of one of the traits that I deem very important is even though there was a lot of fear there, I didn't really necessarily know what I was walking into. I was very persistent, and I'd already tried some other trainings and they didn't really work. So then I tried another one, it didn't work. So I was just trying this as another avenue to try to access more information, like you said earlier, to try to get myself in front of the right information. So I think the short answer to your question is I was very uncomfortable. I was very nervous. And the first day, it was very interesting. They opened up a book of leads for me on the first day, and they said, "Okay, here you go. Start calling." As soon as I got there, and I'm like, I thought I was gonna have like 4 months of training first, you guys. Like, what's happening? You want me on the phone right now? I'm like, oh, I don't even know where's my script. I can't even find it. And then what ended up happening on the second day, somehow, some way, there's a lot of different types of buyers. Some people are ready to go right away. Some people, they refer to them in the industry as being sort of like a lay down sale. They're just kind of, they already know they want the product. Similar if somebody walked into a car dealership, they know they needed to buy a Honda today. That's like a sort of a lay down. You don't need too much salesmanship. They're kind of coming to buy. So on my second day, still not sounding good at all, I somehow managed to sell what they would call a mid-ticket program. I think it was about $3,000. And all the other people doing what I was doing in the phone room, sort of the entry level sort of setting positions, like we're never selling those ever. So, people were normally selling books, or they had like the small bundle of books that they were selling. And then that would be sort of the, top of the funnel. Then it would go into some homework, and then it would go to my coach, and he would actually close the high ticket. Somehow on the second day there, I sold this like pretty impressive thing on the phone. It was worth like maybe $3,000. And at that time, none of the other people were selling it. So this is day two. Me and this individual, Stefan Arnia, were pretty much strangers. The sales manager at that time went into the boardroom where Stefan was, and he's like, yeah, Damon just sold one of these like all-inclusive things, coach, course things that it came with a hotel and flights and this and that to like one of his things and all this. And Stefan was like, who is this kid? Like, what do you mean he just sold one? Like, that's like, no, he didn't. And then he walked into the phone room and he literally just stared me down. And I was brand new at this point. Like, we're literally strangers. He just stared me down, and he's like this really big, and he's a celebrity basically. So I'm like, my heart's like still beating from this. I'm like, I'm making a sale right now. How do I even do it? Like what? Like how do didn't even know how to take the credit card basically. So I got it done, and then he came in and he just stared me down, and he just said, "How are you feeling?" And I was like, "I think I'm feeling pretty good." And he just looked at me, and then he kind of left. So, but at that time, that's how he started looking at me a little bit more seriously than some other people. But I think the point that I'm making is, even though I was fairly nervous about the opportunity, I wasn't good on the script, I had no idea what I was really walking into. It only took 2 days. I made a really impressive sale. And then I set myself above the rest of the people that were in that phone room. And from there on out, it ended up going really, really well. So even if you feel scared to do something like this, you just have to be persistent and you have to push through it. And I promise you, over a period of time, you're going to be able to, as long as you stick to it, there's going to be a lot of benefits. It might take 2 days to do something like myself. Maybe it takes a month. Maybe it takes 2 months to, do your first thing or whatever. But you have to sort of push through it, because again, I'd say 98% of what holds people back are personal fears and personal weaknesses. So that could have held me back. I could have changed my mind at the last minute and chickened out and said, you know what, I'm actually not going to go. There's too much uncertainty. And then I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing now. So you definitely have to feel the fear, but you have to figure out a way to push yourself through the fear if you want to get to the destination, or if you want to achieve, the said result.
Yeah, I love this idea. And actually, I always tell when I got asked about this fear factor, I said, listen, all the people have fear. It doesn't matter. Like, I have fear. You have fear. You just, told us the story. It's just a matter if you push through this fear or not, right? Would you agree with that?
100%. And there's so many things that I can think of as well, that it was a fairly similar thing that happened when it was the first time doing something. Even when I bought my first apartment buildings, it was very similar. Never really thought about investing into multifamily quite yet. Like, I always wanted to, but I didn't think I was going to do it so soon. Like, I did it within maybe 2 years or so of getting into real estate. And it was the same thing. Somebody presented a really good opportunity for these apartment buildings. They were massive renovation projects. Both buildings needed more than $1 million of renovations. There was like a lot of extra stuff. Now there's new professionals involved. And when my old business partner brought the opportunity to me, same thing. At this point, I wasn't super nervous because I've been in the game for a few years at this point, but it's still something that's brand new. It's a lot of money. It's a calculated risk, but if you don't do things properly, there can be a ton of risk that comes along with it. I'm using other people's money, which I already was, but I'm using now millions of dollars of other people's money in one real estate project. So like, there's a lot of kind of nerves that come into place. But same thing there, I figured out a way to persevere and push through that. And then as a result, we closed, like I mentioned in the beginning, we closed the biggest residential apartment building deal in the history of one of the biggest brokerages in my city of 1 million people. And it was like a little bit nerve wracking, a little bit scary. There was a lot of moving parts. I won't go into too much of the backstory, but there was a possibility that we might lose a 500, like a $500,000 deposit, if we didn't have a few things in order, like that day that we didn't have in order, and we had to like figure out how to fill in the blanks and do a bunch of pivots and all this stuff. So you're never going to have all the answers right away. I would just say, as long as you have, and everybody's different depending on their personality profile, I can now be comfortable to move forward with things if I have maybe like 50 to 60% of the information that I need, and then I can sort of get some more of the information as we go. That's just my personality profile. Will that will I run into problems at some point because of it? Probably. Other people's personality profile, when they're a little bit more, analytical, they sometimes need to have 90 or 100% of the information before they're comfortable to make a move. But those individuals, in my opinion, they're losing out on a lot of opportunities because they are spending too much time, analyzing and thinking and trying to make themselves comfortable. So there's always going to be sort of a middle ground in between. You have to figure out how much information you need to be comfortable to move forward. And you just have to have faith in yourself that you're going to be able to put some of the pieces together, even if you don't necessarily have every single answer right at that time. So that would be one more thing that I would leave on the subject is don't think that you need to have 100% of the information to make any moves, or else you're just going to be sort of spinning your wheels forever and you're really not going to go anywhere.
And again, like we mentioned before, like most of the time it's not information, it's the fear which stops you. Like you have to realize
Definitely.
that as well. Yeah.
100%.
Yeah, true.
Yeah.
True. Okay, good, Damon. So that has been amazing. Thank you very much. And guys, by the way, the audience, if you're liking it, so please leave a comment now. What you like the most. What the takeaway you have from today. And I'm gonna actually wrap it up and ask Damon my last questions. Okay, so make sure you leave a comment below. Okay, Damon. So now it's going to be probably hard questions for you, but still trying to answer because they're like, what's the most number one thing, blah, blah, like you have to think, you have to choose.
Yeah.
Okay, good. So number one thing you would, so short answer, short question, short answer. Let's keep it this way because I want to shoot several at you. So good. So most of the goals in life takes persistence. Like it's just a fact, right? So number one tip to actually be persistent, like keep this persistent in maybe a habit you have, or something you do on a regular basis, which is a part of your routine. So what number one tip from you to be persistent?
Yeah, so I would say if people are trying to be persistent, I think a lot of it comes down to, I think if you're very disciplined in your daily routine, I think that's going to help you be more persistent because you essentially teach yourself how to complete tasks that are in front of you. So it can be something as easy as a morning routine. I'm really trying to stick to a morning routine lately as well myself. It takes a lot of discipline. But I think that if people really have a daily schedule that they stick to every single day, not only does it teach you persistence, but it also teaches you confidence in yourself because you're doing the things that you tell yourself that you're going to do every single day. And then when you have a larger obstacle in front of you that you need to persist through, you've already sort of trained yourself how to, move through an obstacle by doing a lot of these small little micro obstacles every single day. It could be waking up at this time, doing this workout, having this for breakfast. It doesn't have to be anything super complicated, but having a strict daily regimen that you follow really helps you, kind of build those muscles. Yeah.
Love it. My next question is, what is happiness for you?
Happiness for me. So I think that those are actually sort of aligned. I find personally that I'm the most happy when I am doing the things that I just mentioned and really sticking to my routine. There's sort of, you end up being proud of yourself if you are able to sort of stick to the things that you're supposed to stick to. So that would be a big one. I think overall happiness, to keep it fairly short, and one thing that I'm really looking forward to in life is it's not only on the business and personal side. I think it's also sort of on the family side. So I think if somebody has a business that's well-rounded, or at least they're making a good living on the business side, and then they also have, a solid, strong family life on the other side to get that type of fulfillment. I think that as a whole will lead to a lot of happiness for somebody because the entrepreneurship is really great, but there's also a void that can be missing if you don't also have some of the other things around you over and above just the entrepreneurship. And I watched my coach, I watched that happen with my coach. He was a very successful entrepreneur, never married, no kids, passed away very young. And he always talked about wanting children, wanting a family. Like there was definitely a void there. So I would say happiness as a whole, in summary, is having your sort of your life and your discipline and your sort of your company in order, but then also having a thriving family life around you also. I don't think you can have true happiness without having kind of, sort of like the full picture.
Nice. I love it. Thank you very much. And my last question. So knowing what you know now, what one advice would you have given to yourself of 20 years old?
20 years old. That was a really interesting time for me. That's right when I started turning myself around. I think that if I was going to keep it really short, I would just tell myself there's a lot more to life out there if you are courageous enough to search for it, would be my main piece of advice. So I guess in summary is there's a lot more the world has to offer you. You just have to be open to receiving, the offerings. That would pretty much be it. A lot of people get really stuck and fixated on their current situation, and they don't really think that they can ever get out of it. That's just 100% not the case. All you have to do is open your mind up to other opportunities and possibilities, and then be open to more of the blessings that come into you as a result. And don't be scared to pursue some of them. So if I could talk to my 20-year-old self, I'd pretty much say snap out of it. There's a lot more to life than what you're currently doing right now. Maybe you should open yourself up to some of it if you want to flourish. So that would be it. Yeah, big time.
Absolutely. Damon, thank you so much. We're going to post the links to your social media so people can connect with you. And we really appreciate your time today. And now we're going to wrap up our interview. Is there anything else you'd like to add before we end off?
No, not really. I really appreciate the opportunity to come in. I really enjoyed the chat. The best way for people to connect with me would be via my Instagram right now. It sounds like you're going to post the links. Yeah. And I do have, for anybody, especially anybody that's English speaking, that's interested to learn a little bit about real estate investing, I'm just about to put out a mini course on, it's about a 1 to 2 hour course, very straightforward, very easy to get through, that just explains a little bit more about real estate investing as a whole and exactly what it is. And then I sort of map out the blueprint that I deem to be sort of like the best path for somebody getting into real estate, especially if they don't necessarily have any money or credit or experience. There are definitely ways that you can become a real estate investor without having to have a whole bunch of capital behind you and credit and high income and all that. So if anybody's interested in that, I was going to put a link together specifically for this, but if they want to DM me the word course on my Instagram, they'll automatically get put onto a list. And as soon as the course is done, probably within the next couple of weeks, it'll automatically go out to them. It's absolutely free, but it might give somebody a better look into real estate investing as a whole and the path that I recommend to go down. Because I tried several different strategies, so many different coaches. I spent 150 grand roughly on coaching and training. So I sort of boiled down everything that I've learned to something that's going to be very easily digestible, just to give people a little bit more information about how they could potentially get involved with real estate also. So that would be it. Damon Woodward 3 on Instagram. If you DM me the word course, I'll send that out to anybody that's interested, absolutely free, as long as they're a follower and a viewer of yours. Yeah.
Amazing, Damon. Thank you so much for this amazing gift. As we said, listen, guys, this is like basically a shortcut to learning what a person has learned for I don't know, the last 10 years in just a very short amount of time. So thank you so much. That's an amazing opportunity. Okay, Damon. So this is going to be the finish of our interview today. Thank you so much for joining, and have a great day because it's the beginning of your day. And yeah, we hope to see you sometime soon on one of our interviews, and we will pick up a subject because I've had much more questions I wanted to ask you, but yeah. Time is time.
Absolutely. Yeah, happy to come on again. And again, I really appreciate the opportunity. So thank you so much. I'll talk to you again a little later.
Yeah, see you later. Bye, Damon. Thank you very much. Bye. Okay, guys, well done. And I see your likes. I see your participation. That's amazing. So as you see, ladies and gentlemen, learn English, okay? Learn English, connect with people. We were just saying that we're just talking about, networking, selling, getting information from the experts, opening your mind to new opportunities. English can be key to all that, right? So make sure you improve your English. You are persistent when doing that, because that's exactly what takes persistence. So we're going to post as well a link, and the link is actually posted. We can use this link and make sure that you study with us and take your next step. Okay. Thank you, guys. Hope you enjoyed it, and see you next Wednesday. Bye-bye.